Today I'd like to talk about building an outdoor sprinkler manifold. Tired of dragging a garden hose around your lawn to water it? Try doing what I did. Install a Y adapter on your faucet and attach one of the outputs to a PVC pipe that goes into the ground. The water comes out of the ground, then enters into your manifold. It travels up and is sitting on the supply side of each of these valves. When you want to turn on a sprinkler leg, simply open the manual valve. This design has the advantage of having a lot of straight runs. That makes it easy to repair as the pipes contract and expand and sometimes crack. What you don't want to build is something like this. Since this is all glued and it's short pipes, a repair requires replacing the whole assembly. Additionally, the valves being this close together, it's quite a plumbing challenge for the sprinkler lines that go down into the ground. So I finally decided to replace this with something more artistic, like this. I'll show you how I did that in this video. We're going to start out by creating a platform to mount the plumbing on. Mount 2 posts into the ground. Since this is only going to be a couple inches away from the house, we'll have to get creative in mounting the plywood. What we'll do is create pocket holes, then attach the plywood from the front. A handy little tool for doing this is called a Craig jig. Just clamp it into place, then you can use their special drill bit and drill the holes. At the bottom of the plywood I mounted some 2x4s to support the weight of the plywood while I'm installing it. Temporarily place the plywood into place and mark where your posts are. No plumbing goes where these posts are mounted, so now you have a working template for where you can put your plumbing. Use a protractor to draw out how much of an angle you want your pipe to be bent at. Okay, here's the big secret to make this whole project work. PVC pipe is plastic. If plastic gets hot enough, it'll bend. So take a propane torch, start moving it back and forth over the pipe while you're rotating it. It might take a couple tries for you to learn not to burn it, but eventually you'll see the PVC will start to sag. Here's another learning curve item. You need to learn not to overheat it. If you do this, the pipe will just collapse on itself. You'll notice I'm wearing gloves. This is a must because that pipe's very hot. Clamp the pipe into place over your protractor marks, then give it at least 5 minutes to cool down. After cooling, the pipe will maintain that shape. And after you've actually formed your first pipe, you can use it to hold down all the remaining pipes you're going to make. This is important because at the corner, the pipe will have a tendency to pinch up. You need to hold that down so it stays round. A couple more tricks to make this job easier. Mark the starting and stopping points of your bend. Now you just apply the heat between the two marks. And never heat the end of the pipe. It has to stay solid to keep the whole pipe from collapsing. So make your bend 4 inches away from the end and cut off any excess after it's cooled down. Here's a drawback from heating PVC pipe. Normally you use a cutter like this to cut the pipe. As you ratchet it, the blade closes and just snips the pipe in half. But every place you've applied heat, that pipe's going to be too brittle to use this type of cutter. Let me show you. You can see it actually snapped the pipe and it's not an even cut. But here's the fix. Use your Sawzall. Set the saw on a table, turn it on and put the pipe on top. You get a perfect cut every time. The valves I used are these big 3/4 inch plastic valves. Looking at the valve, you can tell they're not symmetrical. The bottom end of this white plastic is solid here, but when you look at the other side, you'll see there's a notch. Surprisingly, the valve operates the same whether the notch is up or down. Counterclockwise always opens the valve, so I just put the notch up to make them all look the same. I use threaded valves so that I can do repairs by only cutting one side of the pipe. You can just unscrew the other side and leave it in place. And in my experience, you do have to Teflon tape these, otherwise they will leak. Stagger the valves so they're easier to open and close without hitting your hand on the one above or below it. And these are actually splice fittings I'm using as measurement guides. I'm leaving enough pipe length that I can repair the bottom run at least twice, and the top run looks like 4 or 5 times. Mark and cut each one of your pipes. This is essentially a large homemade jigsaw. Try to pre-position everything where you need it to be, then start cutting. Primer and then glue each fitting. Press it into place and make sure everything is flat before the glue has a chance to set. Here you can see I'm using blocks of wood as spacers to keep my valves exactly the right distance apart while the glue is setting. Building the bottom part, I didn't think the spacers actually made that much difference, so I gave up on them. And finally, the last piece of plumbing, a threaded fitting that I can hook the hose to. Once the plumbing is done, I want to paint the whole thing. Well, except for the valves. The blue valves will go to the front yard, the red valves go to the backyard. A little bit of tape will keep them valves looking good. I'm painting it for two reasons. One is to make it look better because of all that unsightly glue, and the other is to help protect the plumbing from sunlight, which will damage it. Now I need a way to mount this onto my plywood, so I use strategically positioned furring strips. The furring strips give me portable anchor points, as well as moving the valve away from the plywood so it's not resting on it. We'll be securing each pipe with a 3/4 inch metal bracket. At the ends of your furring strip, pre-drill and countersink your holes so you don't split your wood. If at all possible, try to install the bracket tight enough to hold the pipe in place, but loose enough so that when the pipe expands and contracts, it can move. Here you can see I have splices already pre-installed on each of my outputs. This is where the plumbing that's coming in from my yard will hook up to it. You're ready to install. Enlist the aid of a trusty assistant to hold the manifold in place. Then put a screw in each of your pre-drilled holes in your furring strips. At this point, you can extend the plumbing from your yard and hook it up to the manifold. And you'll also want to paint that plumbing because it will be coming out of the ground and exposed to sunlight. Okay, let's wrap this up. You've heard me complain about sunlight all the way through this video. Sunlight not only breaks down the structure of the pipe itself, but also heats up the pipe, which causes it to expand and get longer. So the combination of a weaker pipe and an expanding pipe means you're going to have cracks. This is why we loosely clamped it, painted it, made room for repairs, and you'll also want to try to cover it. I would recommend solid doors go in front of this. But if you don't want to put that much effort into it, you could always use landscape fabric. Simply attach the fabric to the top of your formwork, then sandwich the fabric in between two boards. Now the fabric can be rolled up and down like a big curtain. Well, that's it.